I'm Mary, the librarian in Ephraim. I'll be sort of facilitating the discussion today. And it looks like we are now being live streamed on Facebook. Morgan,
We are,
nodding
yes. I don't know if Mary, I don't see her on here right now. Maybe she jumped out and she's coming back in. Welcome to
Hi,
the book
Carol.
discussion.
Hi. Sherry said to tell you all that she can't make it this book club, so she's sorry she's missing it.
So thank you all for attending. Mary, it looks like she popped out. Maybe she'll be coming back in. This is the Ephraim book discussion, and we are going to be talking about Population 485, one of our Door County Reads books for this year. I know some of you might have also read Truck or a few of his other titles. How many read Population 485?
Oops.
Any Truck?
Yeah, I read Truck. Working on
Wonderful. I'll let Mary take it from here.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Sorry about that.
Bye.
Oh, hi, Carol. So, hi. I'll just introduce myself again real quick. I am Mary Sawyer, the librarian in Ephraim, and I'll be facilitating our meeting today. Today we're talking about Truck, but also Population 485, both by Michael Perry, and both the big book read for Door County. So we do have a couple of housekeeping things I'll go through. All right, as far as muting goes, I'm gonna leave that up to everyone here. So I think if we all stay unmuted, we can sort of watch and see as people are speaking. So unless there's background noise, I'm just gonna leave that up to everybody. Oh, and we do have a closed captioning option that I don't know if we ever used in our past Zoom meetings. So if you'd like closed captioning, that is at the bottom of the screen. On my screen, it says live transcript and it has the CC symbol. So if anyone would like closed captioning, go for that. The hinky thing with that is that you can't use closed captioning and the chat option. So I guess they run simultaneously. So it's one or the other. If anyone is interested in that one. I think that's everything on my checklist to let you know about before we get officially started. So it's good to see everyone this morning, and I hope everyone's gotten a chance to step outside and enjoy the slightly warmer weather, although breezier.
Quick, it's supposed to end at about 5.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, it is after all January.
Yeah, right.
February.
Well, it's February now.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
My gosh, we're almost to spring.
Not close enough.
No.
I
Feels
saw
a little
robins.
like it. Oh, really? That's exciting.
Yeah, well, I couldn't
Oh,
believe it, but then I looked it up and then the official, I can't think of it, bird watchers say that sometimes robins stay in Wisconsin.
We used to have them all year round at my other house.
Really? Yeah. Yeah, I was in shock. I was like, no, that can't be.
I saw one about 2 weeks ago. I agree with you, Carol and Linda. I didn't realize that they were here in the winter.
Yeah.
Only the hardy ones.
What they eat.
Just like us.
Well, they say they eat berries and things like that. They
Oh
can-
yeah, they do eat
they find
berries.
enough berries.
Hi, Leslie.
Hi, hello, everybody.
Welcome.
Gloria.
Hi.
Hey, well, we're
Hello,
just getting
Leslie.
started. So talking about Population 485, I'm just going to start it out the way we normally do with our book club. What did everyone think of the book?
Well,
Linda?
Yeah.
I read this book about 18 years ago
Oh, wow.
and I was a little puzzled by it. So I thought I would try another one. So I read Truck. And that was a long time ago and I did not reread it for this meeting. I didn't love either one.
Okay.
I liked him.
I probably shouldn't be talking, but I thought he is a very good writer, first of all. His images are great. And he says the title of the book is Truck. But I would think, I keep thinking about it, thinking, I don't love it. I can't get into it. I'm having a hard time. I keep going back and forth. What is his goal? And I think he is a recorder of the minutia of everyday life, particularly in a small town. And I just can't get that involved in his thoughts. I think he's got a beautiful way of writing. So that's what I thought of the book so far.
Gloria, I agree with you. He's a newspaper reporter, and so he's recording, you know, everyday happenings. Some of it is so graphic. I don't know if I want to know all of that, but maybe that's good for us to know that once in a while.
Yeah.
I
But
thought,
when, go ahead. Go ahead.
right, I thought some of it was laugh out loud funny.
Mhm.
And I enjoyed the way he interwove the love story between the truck and his wife. Because I thought it was just going to be the book about the truck, but at the end I thought, well, I guess when he says it's a love story, it's about both the truck and his wife. But I did think that it could have used some editing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not interested. Why?
Can I ask? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not sure who I was talking over, but whoever it was, please continue.
I don't
Okay.
think it was me, but I will say that I read them both. I liked the population one much better because I just have no interest in trucks. And there was an awful lot of information, detailed information about, you know, sanding this bit or changing this bolt, and that just didn't do much for me. I thought in the population 485, the part about all the rescue runs that they went on were interesting, and how horrible to have to turn up at an accident and find it a family member. And there was more than one in that situation. And you kind of forget in a small area like this, like us also, that happens.
Yeah.
And I can't think of anything worse.
I suppose it happens all the time in a little place like Ephraim or Sister Bay or Bailey's Harbor, because all of those people who are firefighters are also friends and neighbors. So they would know who is ever in the accident. I remember hearing Niles Weberg, who was a firefighter for most of his life, talk about how hard that is when you come to an accident and discover it's somebody you know, even worse if it's someone you love.
Yeah, someone said several years ago, so I don't actually remember who it was, that they had to give up being an EMT or a firefighter because it was so many of their neighbors,
Mm-hmm.
and they just couldn't deal with it anymore. So it's true of a small town.
Mm-hmm. I presume if you have the same job in Chicago, you would almost never know anybody you came to help, and that would be easier.
Does anyone know an EMT or firefighter in the
Yeah.
county?
Oh, not in the county. My daughter's an EMT, but not here.
I think we all do.
Yeah.
Right. It's a small town.
Yeah.
I
And I'm
met
sure that is difficult when it's somebody you know. And frankly, I think it's difficult for the person they're rescuing as well, when they know the EMT or the firefighter. Sometimes you're in an embarrassing situation where you just wish that nobody would have to see you like that.
Yeah, that's true too.
Or that's the way I would be. I'm thankful I haven't had to call them.
Yeah, if you slip in the bathtub at the shower, that would be really embarrassing.
Exactly, Carol, that's exactly what I'm thinking.
I didn't read either one of them. I'm sorry, I never got to them, but I wanted to sit in just to see the comments and hear what they were about, because I intend to hopefully read them soon.
Yeah.
Oh,
One thing that struck me is the front page of the Advocate, I think it was Saturday. It was either last Saturday or last Tuesday, was saying that Door County's really in need of volunteers for the fire departments and EMTs. I thought, wow, interesting that we would be reading this book right now, or
Yeah.
these books right now, and that our communities are in need of those people. I don't know that this book would encourage me.
That's
to
what I was just thinking.
volunteer. It might discourage me.
Yeah.
So are both books about firefighting or just truck?
Truck is not.
Population 485 is.
Oh, okay, I figured truck was about a fire truck.
Did you read
No.
both, Maggie?
No, I've got both, but I didn't get to them, to both of them. I just did population.
I read Population and I'm halfway through Truck. I liked Population. When I first started reading Truck, I thought I liked Population better, but now I'm getting into Truck. I really like the way he does the minutia descriptions. I really like, growing up, I really liked Charles Dickens, and he reminds me a little bit of just the words he uses, the way he phrases things. I just almost sometimes read the book out loud just to hear the words. And I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed Population.
His vocabulary is pretty amazing.
Yeah, and he comments on that in Truck at one point, that some people criticize him for using
Oh, no.
certain words, and I enjoy those words.
Yeah, I think it's good. Especially if you're playing Wordle.
Yeah.
I read Population 485, and I have to say I wasn't crazy about it. I've read so many books the last 2 years that I was almost sad when they came to an end. I didn't have that same feeling about this book. We heard Michael Perry speak, must have been 3 years ago now, or maybe even 4 years, at a Right on Door County event. And I was kind of chuckling to myself when I read Population 485, because I felt the same way when we heard him speak. He was the guest speaker that evening. At first it was entertaining and I was enjoying it. And then the longer he spoke, the more it just became, in my opinion, repetitive. And that's a little bit about how I felt about the book.
So what is Truck about then, generally?
Truck is about his old truck that he had. And it's sitting, going to seed, so to speak. There's a tree growing up through some part of it and in the yard. And he starts by remembering it very fondly when he was a kid, having experiences with it. And then he switches back and forth to other things. He comes back to Truck periodically. But as I say, he has a lot of digressions about everyday life, about his girlfriends. Maybe I haven't gotten far enough to read the part about his wife, but again, I just wasn't taken with it. I enjoyed it as I was listening to it partially, but I couldn't stick with it. And I kept looking for some kind of overarching, bigger principle or something that he was writing about. And I kept thinking of a writing assignment in high school or college where the teacher would say, write about something you know. And he was writing about this truck that was in his front yard. And he apparently had a lot of fondness for it. And like Mary Wilson, I did not enjoy the nuts and bolts and all that kind of thing. And we had a great blue truck. It was a 50s truck. It wasn't an International Harvester. I think it was a Chevy. And everybody in Door County knew my kids because that was their truck to drive down to Wilson's to work and back again. And Baldy Breidenhagen knew them very well. And, so anyway, but you know, I could write an essay about it, but I don't think it would be enough to continue for a whole book. And I kind of felt that way about the book Truck. And I'm very interested in the person who loved it, whose name I don't have right here. But I think that's a way to look at it too. And I'm interested in population 485. So anyway.
Thank you. That helps.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm only halfway through it, but the way he weaves his love for the truck and his love for Annalise together.
Okay, well, he's just met Annalise at the part I'm going to. He's on his second date with
Oh,
her.
I'm about halfway.
He hasn't
through.
married her yet. or anything.
No, he hasn't married her, but they're heading that direction. He's just about to meet her father, I think.
Oh, really?
Middle of the book. He's a little nervous about that, but
That's great.
and I also don't know anything about trucks or mechanics or anything, but I still enjoy that part.
I think these two books show you the difficulty in writing memoirs, because, I mean, while these individual incidents are really important to you, to make them interesting for somebody else is quite a challenge. And the way he writes, to me, is like writing a newspaper column, a chapter. And then he just put them all together in a book. And sometimes that works, but usually it doesn't. My editors, I don't know about your editors, Carol, my editors always used to say, nobody cares what you think.
Yeah, I do remember that. It's interesting that I was in bargains with my mom the other day, and I picked up a copy of Lake Woebegone by Gareth Keillor.
Yeah.
And I couldn't remember if I'd read it years ago or not, but I thought, I'm going to read that. And it's kind of the same thing. It's it's like he was he a reporter? I think he was.
Yeah, he was.
And he writes about all these little incidents, that happen in his small town and everything. And it was kind of slow going at first, but now I'm kind of enjoying it because it's gotten funnier and more humorous. But I kind of think maybe it's along the same lines. I don't know.
Well, and there was that period there where Lake Woebegone was really popular. And I think Michael Perry was kind of in the midst of his writing right at that time too.
Okay.
Yeah, there's definitely a similarity, I think.
Okay. That was interesting.
I think there is a similarity, Carol, but I think the difference to me was Lake Woebegone, he had a bigger, more overarching kind of way of bringing things together. And I think I keep looking for that with Michael Perry, and I don't find it. And I find each of his little anecdotes interesting, but they don't hold me.
Well, I think Garrison Keillor realized that he did have a bigger audience, where Michael Perry, I think when he was writing, wasn't thinking about that.
Well, I'm thinking of one particular, this was a podcast or something we were listening to as we were driving. I have not read his book, so maybe this is not fair to say, but he was talking about his experience growing up in a one-room schoolhouse and how everyone was together in a schoolhouse. The mayor's son, the poorest guy in town, the plumbers, everybody, and they were all together and they all learned something from one another, and it was a great experience. And then he went on to say how it's not that way now, but it was wonderful growing up, and he gave all kinds of examples about that. That's what I mean by a little wider purpose, putting it in the context of a bigger social network or something like that, because he is interesting and he does write well. But then it just doesn't hold me. And,
Right.
you know, maybe other people find it different.
Leslie, did you say that you laughed out loud at parts?
Yes.
Yeah,
Let
I
me
did
give you-
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Let me
did
give
too.
you one
I did too.
example.
Yeah, do that, please.
All right, on page, I think it's page 10. I'm gonna have to take my glasses off and see if I can find it. But so anyway, the parts that made me laugh drew me into the boat. I've got boat on the mind, book. He's talking about his freezer and the herbs and the poultry and stuff that he's got in there. And he says, mostly it contains vacuum-packed venison, chicken, some fish, homegrown herbs frozen in water so that they will be fragrant when I toss them on the compost heap next summer. So I just think that was so funny. And he has a lot of little tidbits like that thrown in. And I thought, well, that's so funny because I never thought about it, but it's true.
Well, that's like Garrison Keeler. I mean, I've laughed out loud many times
Yes.
reading this book.
Right.
Yes.
Mostly about the old Minnesota guys, you know, and sitting on the porch chawing their tobacco and gossiping. But it's just, yeah, those moments, they make the rest of the read worth it, you know, kind of.
Yeah.
But you know, when you hear about the phrase small town America, it doesn't always mean as small as Ephraim. Sometimes they're talking about a small city, because when we were children, well, you're not all as old as I am, but when I was a child, places like Algoma and Manitowoc, which were closing in on being a city, they had a small town atmosphere, and everybody knew, if not everybody well, they knew everybody who they were at least. And growing up in Ephraim, that upset me. I hated that everybody knew who I was, and I hated that everybody knew what my mother and my father did, and they talked about everybody as if they were all sometimes really good friends and sometimes people they didn't care for. And you know, as a child, you listen to things that you shouldn't hear. And I was an only child for a while. My mother had trouble having babies, so I didn't get a sister till I was nearly 6 years old. So I was dragged along everywhere they went. They didn't get babysitters in those days. If you were invited to dinner, you brought the kid along.
Right.
So I would sit around in people's living rooms and hear all this discussion about one thing or another. And I remember thinking, why are they talking about that? It doesn't mean anything. I just had this feeling that it was superfluous, I guess.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Anybody else here from a small town?
Well, you know me, Linda.
Oh, yeah, there. Now, what do you think, Mary? I remember when we would come to your house for dinner, we would be driving on the way, and my father would say, you remember, Verna is a very good cook. So we would be all licking our lips before we got there.
Oh,
You weren't supposed to say, oh, yuck, I don't like this.
No, well, they didn't. I never did that. I loved whatever we ate at your house.
gosh.
My mother would get a laugh out of being called a good cook.
Well, I remember her saying,
She was better than she thought she was.
I'm sure that's true, because I remember her saying, not to me, but to the adults in the room, I don't like to cook.
Yeah.
Well, that's funny. I'm a suburban girl, but on my father's side, the whole family mostly resided in McHenry, Illinois.
Mhm.
So if you were a Justin or a Freund or a Miller, I was related to you. And it was all the Germans from those families settled there. And my great uncle actually had a tavern downtown. So whenever we'd go visit them, I mean, it was like everybody knew everybody, you know. Same thing. My mother, you know, my grandmother was known for her cooking and things like that. And a great aunt was known for having 3 husbands and, you know, stuff going on. So it was kind of fun to grow up in that, because I wasn't right there every day, but we'd go out practically every weekend, you know, to McKinley. spend time with the extended family, but yeah.
And McHenry is not such a small town
Not
anymore.
anymore, not anymore.
George's father grew up in a really small town about 20 miles from McHenry. I can't even remember the name of it, and nobody would have heard of it. Really small. I think smaller than Ephraim.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of small towns up in that area. My father grew up on a farm, in Richmond, Illinois, and that whole area up there. So, yeah.
So one of, like Leslie did, one of the, it's on page 28 of population 485. He's talking about riding back in the fire truck with Beagle, the guy that had the one eye that didn't focus. And they were talking about the 5 reasons why marriages fail. And this was something I underlined. It said, and Beagle said he knew his last marriage was in trouble when his wife wouldn't let him look at the checkbook. It was just interesting to me to see the two of them kind of riding along in the fire truck discussing marriages. I thought, wow.
I want to hear the other 4 reasons, though,
Yeah,
Maggie.
I'll have to find them here.
Okay.
And this, oh, Carol, this was an old lady had fallen in her bathroom and become wedged between the toilet and the tub. That's what I'm worried about. That'll happen to me someday. And I don't want to know anybody that rescues me.
I'm with you.
Well, I guess in that circumstance, you might not, but a couple years ago, I had reason to call 911 in the middle of the night because of George being really unwell. And the first person who answered, it came to the door, was Bob Volpe, our pastor's husband.
Sure.
I've never been so happy to see somebody I knew in my life.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
just
I
so
can appreciate
relieving.
that.
Yeah.
Oh, I can appreciate that.
Yeah. That there are advantages to knowing the people. The disadvantages.
Well, I wanted to add one thing about the parts that I thought were funny were little insights that he had that I thought were things that maybe I had experienced. So that made it funnier, I guess.
Yeah.
It was something I could relate to.
Right.
Like, oh, I never thought of it that way, or I didn't think anybody else felt that way.
Yeah.
I'm kind of surprised, in some ways that you're kind of surprised that one of these didn't take off nationally.
Yeah.
But I agree with you, Carol, that maybe it needed to be edited better. And maybe it would have, which is too bad. I mean, it's too bad that he doesn't get more recognition.
Is one of his books made into a movie or not? I had heard that.
Yeah, wasn't.
So actually, one of his books, the one that we're talking about now, Population 485, was adapted for the stage.
Really?
So there is a
Oh.
stage play of this one.
That's what it is. Okay.
And I know that Michael Perry himself has been on NPR, or not NPR, PBS, I
PBS.
believe, and done several specials there. I think more along the lines of a documentary than a direct
Right.
adaptation.
Right.
But
Right.
hearing that
Yes.
this book had been adapted to the stage, I thought that was kind of wild. I can't imagine how that would work.
Well, it'd be interesting if like Northern Sky or Peninsula Players or somebody like that would.
Actually, if you check out the
our-
chat, Morgan just mentioned that it is going to be staged.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
So one of the events at the Prince of Peace Church, it's going to be performed on the 11th of February at 7. So
And I think Peninsula Players, the thing is in next week, and it is around the Door County Read as well. And isn't Northern Sky as well?
I know there are some actors from Northern Sky who are participating. I think
Right.
Karen Ball.
And TAP is doing something too, I thought.
Yes. Yep. Good time to point out there is a whole host of events coming up. So we are one of the first to get our book discussion of Population 485 underway. So there are a lot of things coming up. Yep, Maggie, you're on top of it. So if you go to our website, if you come to the library, we've got the schedule of things going on. I won't try to go through them all, but I will say there is a trivia night coming up, I believe on a Sunday.
February 6th.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, and I shouldn't say night, a trivia brunch coming up that I think looks really fun. And also there's going to be a panel of EMT firefighters discussing their work up here coming up, and just lots of really cool fun things. And then the kickoff with Michael Perry is going to be on Saturday. So tons of cool events coming up around this book and truck.
That would be all.
I wanted to say, he's gotten a lot of impressive national attention. If you look at the reviews in the front of Truck, I don't know about the other book, but he's got the Chicago Tribune, a review, a nice review, the New York Times, the Washington Post Book World. You know, a lot of heavy hitters, unlike some of the books that we've read that seem to be ignored by the big news outlets.
I've heard that
USA
Coop,
Today.
Coop came highly recommended too.
Yes.
I have not read it, but it came highly recommended.
I think the interesting thing about these two books is that they were both released about 20 years ago. So the attention for them might have been much more out there when they first came out.
Yeah, I kept looking at the picture on the back of the book and then at the picture on the flyer that came with it. I said, is that the same person?
Yes.
So what caused the re-interest, so to speak, now?
I think because it was a Door County Reads and it's a local
Not here.
local author.
Okay.
Or that was my take on it.
Written by a Wisconsinite, right? At
Right.
least the small town he talks about is in Wisconsin.
Right.
I think the Door County Reads Committee just wanted to recognize all that he's done for Wisconsin writing.
Okay.
You know, he has quite the list of published works out there. And I know he's talked in Door County and just talks all over the state quite a bit. I think recognizing his contributions is a really interesting way to go.
Yeah.
Has anybody read The Jesus Cow? That one sounds interesting. That's a novel.
Jesus Cow?
The Jesus Cow.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that came out about 5-6 years ago. I remember it coming through the library quite a bit then. People were doing book clubs on that one. And I think it's his only fiction.
It says, yeah, it lists all these other ones and then it says as well as a novel, The Jesus Cow.
I know his website is called The Sneezing Cow. So
Yeah.
cows must play a big part in his writing.
In his life.
Yes.
Interesting.
So I did look up a few book club questions online and just sort of went through them. And I thought one of the interesting questions was, who would you share a bowl of cheese curds with, if you could, as a character from one of his books? So if there was someone from his novel, particularly Population 485, that you could meet, who would you want to talk to? I think Maggie mentioned one of my favorite characters, the one-eyed beagle.
Yeah.
He reminded me a lot of Niles Weeborg, who I think would be a lot of fun to chat with sometimes.
Mhm.
The hugger.
Oh, really?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, I would say the author himself.
Yeah, that's what I would
Isn't
like.
it
I
in
agree
his
with
own
you,
book?
Gloria. I'm curious why he went into nursing rather than another field of medicine.
He mentions that, is that in Truck that he mentions it? That it was kind of a fluke. He was in high school and somebody mentioned it and he says, oh, that sounds interesting. And his mother was a nurse.
Oh,
So he didn't put a whole lot of thought into it. He just did it.
well, he saved a lot of lives in a sense, so good for him.
Yeah.
How old is he now? Do we know?
58.
58, okay.
Now, does the population 485 book, does that spend him any more time on his parents? Because I was kind of interested in hearing about them and his upbringing.
I think he talks more about his siblings than parents, although he talks
Yeah.
a little bit about them.
His mother comes in once in a while because she's an EMT also.
That's right.
I remember one story where they were helping a man who kept swearing in front of his mother.
Yeah,
Eventually, he turns to the guy and says, "That's my mom. You don't need to talk like that in front of her." I thought that was touching.
yeah, I remember that part too.
I liked the image of, he got to the scene of an accident and his mother was already there. And he described her as a very small,
That's the
person.
same scene. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
is it the same one? And but she was up on top of the roof of this car or truck or vehicle of some sort with the jaws of life sawing away. And I just got this picture of this little tiny lady up there with this big piece of equipment.
Oh, the other thing he talks about in the video on PBS, he talks about all these foster children that they had. He was the oldest sibling, and then there were 3 more birth siblings after him, I think, but they had, I don't know how many. He said they never knew. He would come home and he'd never know who was going to be sitting at the table. But there was one little girl that had Down syndrome. And does anybody else remember? She had some physical, was it a heart issue or a lung issue?
Probably heart.
A what?
I think it was heart, a heart issue.
And he talked about, he had a picture of her on the PBS show. She was so sweet. And he talked about how they had to, she would have these issues, these health issues, and his mother would have to rush her, or somebody would have to rush her to the hospital through all kinds of weather and stuff like that. And I think that's kind of influenced because they had all these special needs foster kids, that kind of pushed him into nursing too. I shouldn't say pushed him in, I influenced his.
I wonder how he got from nursing to journalism.
You wonder what?
How he got from nursing to journalism.
Oh,
I mean, they're pretty different.
He talks about that somewhere too, and I forget how.
Yeah, I'm sure he does somewhere because he's very verbal about his life and what he's done and the people in it.
He mentioned going to a liberal arts college where he had to take some classes.
Writing.
Maybe
Yes.
that did it.
He's got to be
And-
very,
And he talked about when he was nursing, how he couldn't leave it. He couldn't put it down. So writing was kind of a break from nursing. It was less stress. I
Yeah.
think that was it.
Well, we're not all one thing.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I have so many
Oh,
degrees
yeah.
as I'm sitting here crocheting. Oops.
Question, Mary?
well,
Oh, I thought you had a list of.
oh, yes. A lot of the questions talk about the importance of returning to home after being away for a while.
Interesting.
And let's see. I was curious about his reasons for joining the fire department and for returning home. His book, to me, really, especially Population 45, talked about the importance of being part of a community. And I thought that was really neat that he was talking about this 20 years ago, when I've been hearing a lot of people talking about it now. Just trying to rebuild a sense of belonging to community. And I don't know, did anyone else notice this sort of theme of community building in a sense that it's sort of people are drifting away from each other?
Well, you have to live in a certain kind of atmosphere in order to want that or not want that. And I think Mary might agree with me. Growing up in Ephraim, because it was so little, was both reassuring and confining and sometimes annoying and sometimes joyful. Because every single person, whether you knew them well or not, knew all about you. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, I can't wait to go away to college where nobody will know me. Well, I made a big mistake. I didn't go to the University of Wisconsin where nobody would have known me. I went to a smaller college, so it wasn't any different.
But sometimes even a larger community, depending, like Linda, like you say, can make you feel like it's a small town.
Well, I wonder if we look for that, if we feel like we need it. Because I've lived in
Yeah,
a number of big cities. George and I together have lived in 5 different states. And Ephraim is certainly the smallest place we've ever lived. But yes, when you go to a bigger community, you look for somebody to be a pal.
Yeah, yeah.
I think men and women both want somebody that they can be with and be comfortable with. So I suppose we unconsciously look for that.
Yeah, I agree with you.
My husband is a retired minister, and so whenever we moved, I grew up living in the same house all my life until I met my husband, and then we moved again and again and again. But every time we moved, we had a ready-made community to accept us and to help us find things, and because we would have a church ready there,
Right.
to help us. So I never had to go out and hunt for friends or a support system or something like that. So that was so in a way, and most of the towns we lived in were small.
Mm.
So after I left home, I don't think we never lived in a house in a town as big as what I came from. I mean, my graduating class was twice that big.
Well, that's funny you would mention graduating class. My husband had over 600 in his high school graduating class.
Yeah, I had 800.
That's awful. I can't imagine that. But of course, I went to Gibraltar and I had 40 in mine. So
I had 1,200.
Everybody looks,
Wow.
Yeah.
go ahead. Everybody looks for community, and I think they find it in different ways in a big city than they do in a small town. I mean, we enjoy the small town and knowing people and having people know us. I mean, it goes without saying, or we wouldn't be living here. But I think when you are in a big city, you find community through, you have kids, when they go to school, you're more involved in some of their activities, and some of the friends that you meet at parent meetings and things like that. You see them in a different school, in a different context, all the way in till, your kids are adults. I think you find community in book groups that you join, even in a city, maybe not in a small town, in classes that you take. I mean, it becomes a different kind of a process, and it's not as wide. But even in a small town, there are only a few people from most people who are close friends, good friends, people that they call on all the time. But I think knowing a lot of people is just great in your community and what they do and that kind of thing.
Well, I agree with you now from a different vantage point. Now
Yeah,
that I'm
right.
old, it was different when I was little and I didn't want everybody knowing all about me, but now I couldn't care less and I like to know all about them.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, my favorite town, I think, was Phillips, Wisconsin, which I could walk from one end. We sold our second car because I could walk everywhere. I walked from one end of town to the other. We walked to the doctor. We walked to the library. We walked to the grocery. We walked to the school. And my daughter was probably, well, she was, I think, 5. Oh, she was older than that. She was 7 or 8 when we left. And then she had her 2 younger sisters. And she put the baby in the stroller one time and said they were taking Grace for a walk. And I said, okay. And I'm assuming they're going to walk up and down the front sidewalk, you know. They disappeared. I had no idea where they were for 45 minutes. But I figured somebody would see them who knew where they belonged. And if they were in trouble, they would bring them back. And the baby would get hungry eventually and they'd come back home, which is what they did. So I wasn't the least bit worried.
Well, I lived in the suburbs of Chicago most of my life and then moved to the suburbs of Des Moines, Iowa for the remainder until I retired up here. And I think, you know, like you were saying, you join groups, or I was working, so I made friends at work. But usually I had like one very best friend, and I don't know how that happened, but you know, you find the people you relate to. But I decided I had enough of suburbia. And so in my retirement, I wanted to do something different. And I didn't want to move to another big city. I didn't want to move to another region where there were Southerners or Westerners. I wanted to be somewhere where I felt familiar. And I had vacationed up here a lot. So I thought this was a good place. And everything has been wonderful. I mean, everybody's great. But I will say, because the rest of you have all been here and have lifelong friends here and know everybody, that it's been harder for me to find one good friend.
Oh, yeah.
It's interesting because you're already in your groups. You've already made your good friends. And that's okay. I'm not complaining because I have lots of friends and socializing up here, and that's great. But it's a little different, you know, when you come into a small town and you're not a native, say to speak. There's all these positives about small town living, but there's a few negatives too. You know, it is just what it is.
Well, I suppose it's because of where we all come from the beginning. Because I came from Ephraim, a little town, I couldn't wait to disappear into the wilderness of people. And yet I found that, you know, we lived in San Antonio, we lived in Denver, blah, blah, blah. And I would find somebody every place that could be my so-called best friend at the time. And some of them I continue to correspond with. Some I've never heard from again. So it's just, people are interesting.
Yeah, I mean, my 2 best friends, one's in Illinois and one's in Iowa, you know, and we've been friends for years, 20 years, you know. So
because you lived in those places for a long time.
For that long time, right. And so it's interesting.
And you left and they didn't.
Right.
Oh, gosh. Well, when we all think about our own lives, and this book made me think of that, I thought, gee, there's a lot of fun things that I have done or seen or learned, and I've never told the kids. So I thought maybe I would start writing sort of an autobiography and just keep adding to it as I think of things, and nobody will ever see it except the kids, but I thought they might find it fun. I wish my mom had done that.
You never know, because have you read the book, The Shack?
Yes.
That was written for his kids. That was
I'd
not written to
forgotten that.
publish.
Well, I didn't plan to publish this.
He didn't either.
Oh.
Well,
I
I
think
wish
that's
my
wonderful
relatives
to
had,
hear, Linda.
yeah, I wish my relatives had written something like that because we didn't keep a family history, so it's kind of hard to.
Well, in your case especially, you have somebody from one country and somebody from another.
Yeah, I know
And
nothing.
that would have been fabulous to know.
It would, yeah. I don't know much about my mother's side of the family, just the basics. So it would.
How is her
I have to
memory?
share that my grandmother, towards the end of her life, for Christmas presents, we were all required to give a story, and a family story, and we compiled that just into a Word document, and all of us grandchildren have that and love that.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah,
Neat idea.
That's a great idea.
absolutely. That's really
Really great.
My cousin wrote a book about her growing up days. She was her parents, I guess, were missionaries in Malaysia
Oh, boy.
through World War II. Well, during the war, they had to leave. They went to Costa Rica. I always forget what it's Costa Rica, Puerto Rico, for a couple years. But I am so much younger than they. She is, well, there's 3 daughters, and the oldest daughter is the oldest in my generation, and I'm the youngest in my generation.
Oh,
So she's like, she must be, at least 25 years older than I am.
huh.
So they were all grown and gone. And so reading her book was fascinating to me.
Mhm.
Reading about her life in Malaysia, and then they went to school in India and a boarding
boy.
school. And it was just fascinating for me to read that story.
Mhm.
Have any of you done Ancestry?
Yes.
Ancestry.com?
I started it and then I kind of got bogged down and kind of gave it up.
That's what I did. I started it too, but went so far and then it kind of got,
You know who's in our group who is doing a lot with Ancestry.com is Alicia Mulligan, and she is in California right now, so she probably hasn't joined us for this meeting. But when we retired, I also was going to write a memoir. And my granddaughter, one of my granddaughters, had done a lot of research on family history. And so she had done a family tree, particularly from my husband's side of the family. And I thought, gee, it's so sad just to have a born date and a died date and not to know anything at all about these people. So I was going to write a memoir. And as I've done it, it is such a big job to tackle for everyone, but there are all these family stories that kind of get lost in history. And I think it's wonderful that was a Christmas kind of project. Everybody's gift was, a story about the family or growing up. I'm going to keep that on record.
Yeah, that's really neat.
Well, Morgan, this is a good time to introduce that because they've got 10 months to get it going.
But like our stories were sometimes just really short or
And that's the
really
way they
funny.
do it.
Yeah.
And that would be a great gift to give to, like, my mother-in-law, who can't do it. She's 97 and
Memories.
fast, and all she's got is her memories.
Yep.
Well, I know one year I couldn't think of anything, so all I did was write down every kind of animal that had ever come into our house. And I told my mom that's God's way of saying that she needed a pet, and she just refused to get one. So he'd send everything from a bat to a duck to, we had rabbits randomly in our house. I mean, it was crazy when I actually took time to write down every kind of animal that had ever been in our house.
Oh my goodness.
So you're not talking pets, you're talking animals.
No. Like I said, God has been trying to tell her for many years that she needs a pet.
Very cute. There's a book there, I think.
Oh, many books in my fabulous free time, maybe when I retire.
Don't count on it. I keep waiting for the retirement to be boring and I have to find something to do, but that hasn't happened.
I do hear
Yeah.
that.
That speaks well of you, Linda.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
I will say too, for anyone who's interested in the ancestry and genealogy stuff, at the library, we have a virtual genealogy club that meets via Zoom, and it's recorded, so you can watch it on YouTube, but it doesn't get pushed out to social. And they share ideas and how to continue research, or how to do different types of research even too, and share funny stories. But that's always on the third Thursday afternoon of the month.
I did that the first 2 years I was up here, I think. It was fun. Yeah, and you meet some people and they help you with figuring it out and making the pathways easier because they've done some already.
There's a group in Northern Door that I used to belong to that does that sort of thing. And it was,
I believe that's part of them. Linda, there's a few people from, it was the Northern Door Genealogy Club,
yeah,
who's
Yeah.
kind
I
of
know
the
that they met at the Sister Bay Library, the one I went to, I think.
correct.
right, yeah.
Yeah. And so they have come into virtual land, since we've been virtual, so that they can continue. But there's always interesting stories in that group. I get the joy of listening to everyone's videos when I'm editing things. And so I learned lots of very interesting things.
Well, retirement isn't boring, Linda. It's COVID that's made it boring. I mean,
Oh, that's right. I always thought I was a big reader, but I didn't get to the point where I would read a book a day until COVID.
Oh,
I would love to see that list of books that you've read and either a plus or a minus next to them.
Well, the sad thing is my memory isn't what it used to be. So half the time I take another book out of the library and I get it home and I've already read it.
I've had that happen too.
Well, especially if you're reading that fast, I would not remember them.
yeah.
I'm stuck. I'm all
I
tangled
think
up.
it was kind of like how you feel if you're so hungry that you tell your mother you're starving. I must have felt that way because of COVID. I have a very nice husband who is willing to visit with me, but I was just reading like a crazy person.
My thing
I
was
was-
my art. I just spent 3 days framing art because I
boy.
frame them myself, and it
Oh,
takes
boy.
about an hour each time, hour or two. So that kept me busy for 3 days. So
Yes.
I was baking like crazy.
Oh, I'm coming to your house.
yeah, right.
I've got my sister just sent me a big box of lemons from California. And so I've been baking. Right now I've got lemon bars in my fridge and lemon blueberry muffins in my cake cover and lemon bread in my freezer.
Oh my.
How come we aren't meeting at the library and you bring the treats?
Yeah.
Yes.
But I started baking cookies and sending them to my daughters who one daughter lives here and she still had to work through COVID. But when COVID hit, my other two daughters, one was a nurse and one was a zookeeper.
Oh, boy.
Wow.
They still had to work.
Oh,
And so I sent them boxes of cookies every month or so to share with their coworkers.
oh, that was beautiful of you.
Yeah.
They were very excited. And then if I went a while without, are we getting more cookies soon?
Well, I want to thank everyone for coming today. It's so good to see your faces and to talk to you about this book. I hope that if you're able to, you'll check out another event for Door County Reads. I think if everyone is okay, does anyone have any parting words on the book that they'd like to share? Any thoughts that haven't been? All right. Well, I think if you don't mind, we will start wrapping things up, but I will be in touch with everyone about the book for March.
Okay.
And again, it's just so good to see everybody.
It sure is.
Likewise.
Here.
Thank you, everyone.
Everyone. Take
Bye.
care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.